I'm Christy with Green Living Off Grid, and today we're going to be looking at how to make a cloning station for your tomato plants. As you can see here, I have several tomato plants growing in coffee cups that I've designed to work as miniature little hydroponic deep water culture units. I have a little aeration tube going underneath in the water, creating some aeration in these pots, and these plants are growing really well in this unit. And now what I'm going to be doing is cutting a few of these stems and cloning them to create more tomato plants. I'm going to be using this Park Seed Biodome unit. This is the 60 tray unit, and what I did to make this into a cloning station is I created an aeration grid at the bottom. As you can see underneath here, I have soaker hose lines. This is the 1/4 inch soaker hose lines you can get at Home Depot. And I created extra holes. I used a little staple remover to put extra holes in the unit to create more aeration. I also inserted these 316 grade washers. That's the marine grade stainless steel washers. The size of the washer is 5/16. So it's the 5/16 washers. The grade is 3/16. I ordered those online so I can get the higher grade so it doesn't decompose in the nutrients of hydroponics. So I also use the little dig connectors for soaker hoses. I've got little goof plugs here on the end. I've got some T's. And of course I put little elbows here in the corner. And of course another T to connect my air line. And I designed this thing off of an original grid that I purchased through Modular Hydro. Modular Hydro creates these little aeration grids, and they do a really good job of aerating their grids. In fact, this one always outperforms the ones I'm able to make. But this originally started with just this one little square unit, and I decided to extend it, and that's why my airline comes in the middle on this little square, whereas if I were to redesign this, I would put the airline on both ends so that it would be equal air delivery. Just like I've done here, I have one on this end, I would put an airline on the other end, coming in right here as opposed to right in the middle where it is right now, if I were to redesign this. But you can make something similar like this, just using the soaker hoses, creating extra holes so it does not give backflow to your air pump. You want to have a really good aerated line. And if I just use the soaker hoses by themselves without putting extra holes, there is back pressure on the pump. And I noticed too that hydroponic solutions do tend to clog the pores. So always make sure you put extra holes in. Like I said, I found a staple remover works really well for me in aerating my lines to give them better airflow. And so that's what you can do. Just create a little grid for aeration. This is a styrofoam tray that Biodome sells with their units. And it's designed to sit on top of this water tray. So you put water in this, and usually it'll float and allow for you to put your little like Biodome grow plugs in here. I use the 40 tray unit to start my hydroponics plants with the 1-inch rock wall cubes. So you can use it in hydroponics. If you get the 40 tray, the holes are a little bit bigger and they allow for the 1-inch cubes to be able to sit in those. They also have a 60, this is the 60 tray unit. They have the 40 tray, and I believe it's 16. They're bigger holes, and they allow, you could even do the rapid rooter little sponges for growing in your garden, because those decompose in the garden. You can't use rock wall cubes in a garden because they don't decompose. But you can get rapid rooters little plugs as well in their bigger trays. So they have 3 different size trays that you can use for various things. I recommend the 60 size tray when you're just using it for cloning, like I'm doing here, because these things are a little bit small, but they're perfect for putting stems in. So all you have to do is run your little air lines down through there. Don't forget to put a check valve in so you don't have any water flow back through your air line into your pump. So always design it with a check valve. And then your little aeration grid comes down underneath, sits in the little water tray right here. Then we'll plug the pump in, get some aeration coming in with some water in the bottom of the tray, and you're ready to start your cuttings. Now before I do that, I want to show you real quickly a biodome in operation with my Rockwell cubes. I have some plants growing right now, so some seeds starting. So I'll show you how that is set up. And then of course you see how to set up the cloning tray here with just a little cloning device underneath and sitting in your little water tray. All right, let's take a look at the biodome unit seed starter in operation. Well, here you see a biodome tray. I've got, as you can see, the little floating raft that they create for it. And eventually the roots will come out through the bottom. So one of them is already starting to root through. But I've got several Rockwell cubes. These are all from my hydroponics. Again, these guys don't decompose in the soil. So if you're going to grow anything for soil, it's best to get the biodome sponges because their sponges will decompose in soil. But for hydroponics, the 40 tray unit works really well. I have some tomato starts that I have started here and starting to come through, and then I've got some beans here. And I've got a little heat mat down here. That's what that little thing is. I've got a heat mat running through here. This here is the larger tray unit. When I'm ready to start my outdoor garden, I still need to wait a couple weeks yet. But I put the little rapid rooter sponges here that they sell. You can see those holes are a lot bigger. They also sell their own sponges for these guys. So you can buy it either from Park Seed or, you know, use the rapid rooters in the bigger trays. So that's how the Park Seed seedling trays are set up. You can see with the heat mat, creates a nice little humidity system. And definitely my beans and warm crop tomatoes like the extra heat here in these biodomes. They work really great for starting seeds. Well, here is my little cloning tray system. I have some lights on the roof of my bin and a clamp light to give it more additional light. I've got my aerator going right now in the bottom of my tray. You can see the bubbled water. That's what you want. You want some good aeration. And I'll be able to stick the stems on through. You can see it's aerating the water really good. You don't have to put any nutrients in when you're just starting the roots. When you're just cloning roots, just having basic water and some good aeration is all you really need. Now we're going to cut our stems and stick them down through the holes of this tray to start these roots. Alright, well, here is a closer look at my tomato plants. I'm going to cut no more than 2 or 3 stems off of each plant because you got to remember the rule of thirds. If you cut more than a third of your plant, you're likely to send it into shock. So you don't want to cut more than a third of the green growth on your plant. If it has some dead branches, let's say you're trimming bushes or something, that doesn't count. That doesn't matter. But you know, any branch that's alive, you want to stick with not cutting more than a third of your plant. So we're just going to take a couple stalks off of these plants and see how they start. So we'll start, let's say, with I think I'll do this one right here. You want to cut it right there, kind of at the base of where it trunks off, so it could still send a little new stem off of that little cut place right there, if you can see. I just cut it right there at the base. And I'm going to take this little stem and stick it down into my aerated water reserve. Make sure that the stem goes down into the water so it has a chance to get aerated. You really don't want those stems to sit out any length of time. You want to immediately put it in to your tray, because if it gets exposed to air very long at all, it'll start to seal up and your end won't be able to start a root. So you want to get it in the water immediately. Have your tray all set up before you start cutting your stems. We'll do another one. Let's do this one over here. Again, cutting down at the base of where the stem comes out. If you can cut it at an angle, it's always helpful. But there we are. Alright, I'll just cut a few more of these and then we'll see how they root over the next couple weeks. Well, here I've trimmed the tomato plants. No more than 2 or 3 stalks off of them. And there are my starts. Alright, we'll give this a couple weeks and we'll check and see how the roots are developing. I would say 2-3 weeks I should have some good roots on these guys. Going in my little bin. Well, here it's been 3 weeks since we put these stems in. You can see there's some yellowing. We're going to see if we have any roots on the bottom of them and check them out. After 3 weeks, I see some roots coming off this one here. You can see the roots developing. That stalk is still pretty green. The yellow ones over here, I don't see any stem growth, root growth on them, but this one in the back, that was a really fresh green shoot when I cut that. Look at that guy, he's got a lot of roots coming off. So we've got roots on this one right here. We've got a couple little shoots coming off the end on these two here. So I've got about, yeah, it looks like 4 at least. These guys, I'm not sure they're going to make it. I didn't see any sign of roots on these. And they're kind of yellowing pretty good, but I'll go ahead and leave them in the tray a little bit longer. It doesn't hurt. See if we get any tomatoes off of these, but at least we got this one here, and these two have some very little tiny shoots developing. So it looks like I'll get 4 tomato plants from here. So you saw the stalks that I'm cloning in the cloning tray. And down here I have the tomatoes that I started from seed. I've got my little aerated tubs ready for my new starts, my new tomato starts that I've cloned. You can see the roots on the bottom of this one. So what I did is I put a little hole in the bottom of a net pot. I'm going to cut a Rockwell cube in half to put around the stalk to kind of hold it in place, and then we'll put some Hydroponics clay pellets around it. Here you can see I have a Rockwell cube here that I've cut in half. I'm going to soak it real quickly in the nutrient reserve just to get it wet around it. There we go. And now we'll just place the stalk around in between the Rockwell cube, and that'll help hold it. Just put this around the base, right above where the roots are starting to come out. I'm probably going to, yeah, just right about there. Set this down into the net pot, and the Rockwell cube will wedge the tomato plant at the edge of the hole so that it will be able to develop the roots below the hole in the net pot. So here you see I've got the Rockwell cube wedged with the Hydroponics clay pellets. Then I get a little bit of water around it. So here you see my cloned tomato plant in the net pot, 3-inch net pot with Hydroponics and Rockwell cubes. The roots are coming out the bottom. The Hydroponics and the Rockwell cube is holding the plant in place in my net pot. And now all I'm going to do is set this down in my aerated hydroponic reserve. This is my small little bucket that I'm going to use here as a transition place for the plant to grow up a little bit bigger before I can stick it in my hydroponic bins outdoors. So this will allow the roots to develop more, develop a little bit longer and down into the reserve, and once we have a decent root base, then I can stick it in my big hydroponic tubs that I have in the greenhouse. Something else that people often ask me is, what do I use as my nutrient solution for my plants? Well, when it comes to these small little tomato plants, I'll start them on Maxi Grow, the General Hydroponics 10-5-14 formula that supports the green growth. I just put a little bit of this powder in these little aerated hydroponic reserves, and I get the water level to just below the net pot. You can see the hole there. That's where I keep the water level when I'm starting them, once they've set their roots out. And I put just about, in these small little coffee pots, I only put like a 1/4 teaspoon of the Maxi Grow, and that helps again to support that green growth as they're developing their roots out further, and of course developing the plants. These guys right here, I started these from seed, and I'll just show you what I did with them. You can see the roots are starting to develop out in their little cracky pots. I don't have any aeration in these, but they have enough roots here, they can just sit in these for a little bit longer as the roots get a little bit longer before I put them in the greenhouse. So these plants were started from seed, and this of course is my clone plant. We're going to see how they do. And comparably, they were started around the same time, so we'll just see how these plants perform, the ones started from seed versus the ones that are cloned. Well, take a look at my tomato plants that I started from seed. Look at those roots. They're looking pretty good now, nice and long. So I could probably put these out in the greenhouse. It's warmed up outside as well. So I'm getting my greenhouse plants started. So this is about ready to go out. And let's see how these plants compare to the ones that I started from the cuttings that I took off the plants. Let's take a look at that. As you can see, it's been in here about a week and it's developed some nice green growth. Now let's go check these roots and see how they're developing down below. Take a look. Oh, look at those roots. Wow, don't they look great? Now if I was going to put these in the garden, I would let them get a little bit longer. They're probably about 3 or 4 inches right now. I would let them get maybe 6 or 8 inches before I put them in the garden soil beds, because they have a hard time establishing themselves when they're in soil. But moving them directly into a deep water culture hydroponic system, this length is just fine. This is perfect to put them out in my greenhouse, in my deep water culture bins. I'll do that in another video. But for now, you can see the cloning is working. A couple weeks in the tray, in the pure water tray, to get those roots started, and then into these bins, or you can put nutrients in the cloning unit. But as you can see, they're doing really well. Look at all that green growth, and the roots are developing, and so cloning the tomatoes is a success with this system. Just cutting those stems off. Now let's look at some of the other smaller stems. This one right here, as you can see, this was one of our smaller stems, and wow, take a look at the roots that have developed in 1 week here in the nutrient reserves here in my coffee pots. Doing really well. Let's look at the other one. Look at this. Yeah, that's some decent roots on that guy. I think I'll let those two get a little bit bigger, develop a little more foliage growth before I put them in the greenhouse, but they're looking great. But what about, you guys might remember these guys. Let me get the stem out of the way. You can see, remember the ones that were turning yellow? Let's see how those roots are doing. I put several of those stems in here, and I had one that, you might remember I had 4 plants that had some roots on them, and one of those plants is in this bin, but I decided to stick the other yellow ones in too, just to see if we get anything. Well, let's take a look. Would you look at that? Almost all of the stalks have started developing roots. Look at that. Now, in my hydroponic reserves, I only have room for, these, that one in the back, and then these 2 here, and all of my ones that I started from seed. So I think I'm going to let these roots develop out a little bit more, and probably grow a nice massive set of roots before I try to plant these in some garden beds because I don't have any more room in my greenhouse. But yeah, overall I'm pretty impressed with how the cloning turned out with these plants. Just with these cuttings, all I had to do is just cut those little stems, get them in some water, some pure water for a couple weeks, and then put them in here with some nutrients. Or you can always put some nutrients into the actual cloning tray too to develop those roots out a little bit further. But overall, I'm pretty impressed. It looks like most of our stems have taken, and they're developing some nice roots for a summer crop of tomatoes. I'll show you guys in another video how my deep water culture system is set up in the greenhouse. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check us out at greenlivingoffgrid.com.